Dr. Jazz.
Yeah, thanks, Joe, for taking the
Dr.
time to,
Jazz.
you know, to explore.
Thanks for having me, Samo.
Yeah,
Got some
you're.
great people. You've interviewed some great folks, man.
Yeah, I love doing this. I just started during the COVID, and then, I'm quite a geek reading encyclopedias all the time and like checking the musicians, who's played with whom, and I like this exploring. So it's kind of this personal ego project that I'm doing. I mean, you know,
That's something I miss, man, from when I was coming up. Um, I think it's something I miss, and even it's strange. Even some young musicians I talk to, when we my education in this music was sitting, reading liner notes on LPs, and then and then later on CDs. But I always love to see, oh, who's the bass player on track 7, and
yeah,
who are the singers on track 3, and exploring the music that way. It's still possible, but it's more difficult now that on a digital format. You just have to do a little more of a deep dive.
yeah, yeah.
I guess,
But I agree with you what you said. Like
Yeah.
the younger people
Yeah.
sometimes really don't do that anymore. Like pianists start with Brett Meldau, or
Man,
it's like,
everything-
come on,
everything
go back.
changes.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, the first one of the first jazz albums I bought
Yeah,
was
yeah.
was this, man. Seriously,
Oh,
it's
that's amazing, man. Wow.
really. I started.
That was a really fun record. That was a really fun record to make, man. And who was that? Billy Childs and Gene Jackson and Gomez.
Eddie, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, man, that was such an and I remember Eddie on that record was such a he was just such a beautiful team player, man. Because of course, for me, he was a living legend, and he although Eddie actually played on my very first album, that band I was talking about
yeah, yeah,
that Moses used to play in.
yeah, yeah.
My first album was Eddie Gomez, Phil Markowitz, and Keith Copeland.
Keith Copeland, yeah,
And Eddie was just always a nice man, just a really nice man.
yeah. I mean,
You know?
yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I saw on
Yeah.
Bandcamp you released this live at front of the silver screen or something like that. It's back already in 1982.
I got a phone call from Phil Markowitz.
Really?
I got a phone. I got a phone call from Phil Markowitz, who said I'd like to re-release that album that was done so many years ago. And my manager Nadja Van Masso is she's like a digital genius, and she knows how to do all of that stuff. So she implemented everything just to make it happen, and released it digitally 38 years later. But it was fun to listen to after I hadn't listened to it in 30 years.
It's funny, right? If you do that.
Yeah, fun, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's incredible the amount of work you've done. I've been following what you've done in the last 20 years, and it's just your writing ever since the 80s, or even since I followed you. It's so much, and I've listened to Subtle Disguise, and it's wow. I want to ask you about some of the stuff you've done, and
Sure.
and
Man,
but-
I'm just here to hang out with you, man. Ask away, and I'm
okay.
sure we'll have a great conversation, man.
Yeah. I mean, first I want to ask you about your quartet, like especially where did you hook up with Jim Ridl? He's one of those, again, underrated cats. I think, obviously he did with Pat Martino so much and his own stuff, and with Liebman, but how did you guys hook up? I mean,
I did an album with a wonderful drummer named Tim Horner, and
Oh.
Tim Horner was the original drummer in Maria Schneider's band, and he played with the Hank Jones Trio and lots and lots of other people. And I think Tim was one of these people who he was one of these. He was a perennial sideman, who worked with everybody, but he had his ears open on all those gigs. He was listening and paying attention. And then when it came time for him to record his own music, all of a sudden it was like a fountain of beautiful writing, and all of those influences, all the stuff that influenced him, he finally had a chance to let those influences speak through his pen and through his being a band leader. And it was on that album that I did with Tim where I met Jim. And I remember, Samo, I'm sure you've had this experience with colleagues and friends. I had never played with Jim, and the first song we did, Tim said, instead of individual solos, why don't you and Jim, why don't you trade phrases with one another, and we'll do it that way. And we did that, and it was just this immediate sort of finished each other's lines, and the evidence is on the recording. That was the first time we ever played, and I just felt an immediate kinship with him. And when I was putting together a new band, I just thought I'd really like him to be involved in it. And Samo, he's one of these guys. Jim Ridl is one of these guys who stylistically you can go anywhere with him. Oh, sure. He loves classical music, and he swings very deeply. He's really into the tradition. But at the same time, he's very modern, and he plays electric keyboards, and he plays beautiful acoustic piano, and he's just a very open kind of cat. And it's just been, it's been beautiful. We're getting ready to do a bunch of East Coast dates that are coming around the corner, and we had a rehearsal yesterday, and we hadn't played in a while, and it was just such a pleasure to connect with the guys again, and it's just this effortless music making, a sense of trust. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
just
so
that
important.
Feeling of trust that. Yeah. So Jim is just it's a privilege for me, and every time I get a chance to play with him, and I appreciate so much that if I'm writing music, or if I'm notating like a piece of piano music for him, I always catch myself and think, man, what a privilege it is to be able to have this musician, knowing that he's going to take care of my music, that he's going to work on it and put for him, I think music is a labor of love, like no matter what he's doing,
Yeah.
And so it feels like a privilege every time I get a chance to play with him. And I feel very lucky, man. I feel very lucky.
Yeah, it's so nice that you guys hooked up, because like I said, people should know about him, but they don't so much, he's so under the radar, but it's so good, man. Like whatever he did, it's
and talk about under the radar, man. Yeah. I mean, we could have this whole conversation about people who are under the radar, man. And there's a pianist in New York named Manuel Valero.
Oh, sure, man,
who I think should be a superstar, and who's like just an absolutely astounding musician. Who I just scratch my head going, why is this guy not? I mean, he's known, the people who know, of course. Sure. But he's an absolute wonder of a musician, and we have a mutual friend, man. I talked about before, Marco. I'm talking about Marco Ciccens.
Sure. Yeah.
And Marco to me, man, when I first heard him, he blew my mind.
Yeah, he's really awesome.
I heard him first on one of his own pieces where he was playing this hyper modern stuff, and it was just killing. And then I heard him with his trio with Joe Saunders and who's the drummer he uses? Sudbury.
Yeah.
What's his? I forgot how to pronounce his name, but this trio playing like absolutely stunningly modern and beautiful music. But then I heard him play Duke Ellington ballad, or heard him play and sound like all the Oscar Peterson influences would come out, and you just go, oh man,
Yeah.
So there are so many musicians who are like stunningly wonderful, who are I'm not even sure if there is a radar anymore. Talking about under it or over it, there may not even be a radar. The radar may have been turned off.
Yeah, it's true actually. No, but it's also like you know, the guys in your band, honestly, the bass player and the drummer, I didn't know. And I really, in your quartet, and I really follow.
Yeah.
I try to follow what's happening. And I was like, man, who are these guys? You know, like, it's incredible. Like,
well, I'll just tell you quickly, the bass player is Lorin Cohen, and he's a bassist. He's from Chicago. He had an amazing funk band in Chicago called Vertical that was really influenced by Jamiroquai and Earth, Wind and Fire and bands like that. But and he played acoustic bass with Monty Alexander. So he talk about he had great electric bass, great acoustic bass, and he's just one of those cats, man, who just plays great. And the drummer, Samvel Sarkisyan, I met when I was teaching in the Netherlands, and he was 18 and already playing great. And now he's 25 and just a masterful musician, man, who just eats up everything, man. And you know, what can I say, man? I think it's at this point in my life too, man. It's important to have musicians who you feel are family, and that you feel like you have a really that you have a friendship with, man. That it's not just about making the gig or when's the next tour, when's the recording session, but it's a feeling of, no, these are truly my tribe. You know, these are my friends, my brothers in arms. You know.
Yeah.
And I feel that with these musicians, you know, that's the most important thing, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Also for
absolutely.
writing music, like when you wrote the tunes for Subtle Disguise, did you know you had Jim, let's say, on piano and all these guys? Like when you write, I mean, in general, when I listen to it, I think you kind of have that even in the past projects that you write for the players. I mean, is that yeah?
Yeah. I mean, very much so. And I, you know, I knew who was going to play the music, and I knew, I knew how they were going to take care of the music. And I, actually, Subtle Disguise was the first. That's when I put the band together, was for Subtle Disguise. And now we have a second album coming out that's called Makram, and it's going to be released at the beginning of 2023. But it's with the same quartet.
Fantastic. Wow.
And some special guests. And as far as I'm concerned, Samo, I want to continue with this band. You know, if I had the opportunity to do something, you know, to do a repeat of my career, one thing I would do is find a group of musicians. Well, I guess I've been searching for that group. I guess I've been searching for this group my whole life. But to find a group of musicians and to stay and to keep that band of individuals met together over a long period of time. I guess you have to find the right people, you know. And there's a New York sensibility. There's always been a New York sensibility of finding the best known guys for a project, but then it's not a band. Then it's a feeling that someone's making the gig or someone's making the recording session, but it's not a band, you know.
Yeah.
And I just the idea of keeping a band together, you know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely after the amount of work you've done. I mean, but although you had to do also that other stuff, you know, to get where you are now, I think everyone has to do that. I mean, that's how the game goes in a way, I guess.
Man, have you ever gone someplace, man? Like you'll go here, like an incredible, you know, all-star group, and it'll be very good. But then you'll go to some small towns somewhere on a night off. You'll go into a club, and you'll hear a group of musicians who individually aren't as good as the all-star group you heard, but they've really put the time in and the care and the attention to details. And they really sound like a band. And of course, the optimal thing is to have the greatest players who are also a band. Of course the optimum thing. You know?
No, but there is also, like, you have, you know, these where, you know, people hired, I don't know, let's say Dijonette and Dave Holland as a rhythm section. There are so many albums like that, and it's, I mean, you know, those two guys are killing on any album, but it's not a band. It's just like they came, they played, you know, of course, killing it, but it's no chemistry really. You know, you see the leader is like way. He's not. He's not in the same league. It's just like I have those guys, and there are so many moments like that. I think, which are like, yeah.
I think there was I think there was a shift in the music, and I'm not sure when it happened, if it was 20 years ago or 25 years ago, where musicians stopped giving validity to the all-star concept and started saying, I want to play with my friends. I don't need to play with, as you said, Jack DeJohnette and Ron Carter. I need to play with people who understand what I'm trying to convey, and people who are my friends and peers. And that was a real healthy change, I think. And that's been going on for a while. So anyway.
I agree
It's a
completely.
funny thing,
Yeah, it is. But about subtleties, guys, you said you have guests, and you have my dear friend David Binney on saxophone, who I've known for 20 years, and Adam Rogers, and of course they've moved back to the West Coast, but like I guess you've been in New York, and those guys. How did you hook up with Dave and Adam? I mean, did you guys play before in situations, or?
I remember playing jam sessions with Adam when I was in my 20s in New York, and we
Oh man,
we crossed paths. Times we've known each other for years and years and years and years, and I was a fan of a band that Adam and Dave had.
Lost Tribe.
I mean, Lost Tribe. I mean, 30, 35, 40 years ago, man.
Yep.
And I was a fan of that band. Ben Porowski on drums, and
and FEMA. Yeah.
But what's amazing to me is that Dave and I recorded on an album. Dave, John Abercrombie, Francois Mouton, and myself on a Ray Levere album. He's a drummer, wonderful drummer, Ray Levere. But that was the only time that Dave and I had recorded together. And I've just been a fan of Dave and his music for forever. And on this album, I just really heard his voice. And it's really funny. I heard Adam on this record, but I didn't know. What Adam did was amazing, because there's some music. There's a piece called "Motherless Children."
Yeah.
Raul Midon sings, and I always knew how much blues Adam had in his playing, but I didn't know how much. And what he brought to the table on that song was so drenched in and imbued with the deepest roots of the blues. I couldn't have asked for a better voice, on that song, because it's a very, very old blues song.
Yeah.
And what Adam brings to it is sort of it's perfect in its humanity. It's an expression of like what the song needed. And Adam's one of those cats who can just fall out of bed and play great. But what he brought to it was spiritual.
Yeah.
And it just came from his deep understanding of where that song was coming from, So I was just happy to have those cats on the record. It's nice, nice to be able to have recorded and made enough albums where, like, and have it paid for by somebody else, that you can say, I'd like these guys to be on my record, and pick up the phone and call them, and it works out,
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Why did you pick that Motherless Child tune by Wild Willie Blind Johnson or someone like that? Blind Willie Johnson,
yeah. Because it was a song that had meaning for me. It had meaning for me what the song was about, and it also I had lost my sister, and that's a song that I remember listening to in her room when I was a boy. It was on a Steve Miller album, and that's one of my earliest memories, was listening to Steve Miller sing "Motherless Children," and it was sort of a tip of the hat to what the song was about, as we become more and more. Our politics are becoming more and more cruel and more selfish, and it spoke to that to me, but it also was a little hug to my sister also, and having the ability of having Raul Midon on that song was very meaningful to me. And something I didn't know, Samo, was because it's a song about orphans. It's a song about orphaned children.
Yeah.
You know, it's called Motherless Children, and it was written by a blind man. And after Raul recorded the song with me, we were talking weeks and weeks later. We played some dates at the Jazz Standard with the band, and he said to me in a conversation, he said, "Man, you know, there's something you don't realize, and that's that, you know, my blindness isn't the only thing I share with Blind Willie Johnson. But I was also orphaned at the
wow.
age of 2.
Okay. Wow.
And I share that. So when I was singing that song, I had that in my heart also as I was singing it. And I didn't know that, but those are moments that are very meaningful, you know, when they happen. And I didn't even know that until after the fact, you know.
Wow, man.
Anyway, it was such a privilege to be able to do that, you know, to be able to do that song, you know.
Yeah. Raul seems to add so much to this album, I think, you know, about this, it's like this cream on top of a cake or something. Like, what does he mean to you? Like the vocals especially in your music, what do you feel they added actually? I mean, if you look at it.
Yeah, well, there are those songs I wouldn't have done without the voice. You know, those are songs, both the Bob Dylan song "Who Killed Davy Moore," also "Motherless Children." I simply wouldn't have done them if I didn't have Raul on the session. And what he brings as a vocalist, he's got a deep, you know, intellectual understanding of jazz and in all its complexity.
Yeah.
Graduated from the music program at the University of Miami, and he's an amazing guitarist. But he also understands, you know, rhythm and blues and pop music and the blues in a deep way, and everything below the waist. You know, he's got that, and he's also got everything above the neck. You know, and I became friends with Raul many years ago when he came and sat in. I had a band with Victor Bailey and Delmar Brown and a bunch of bunch of beautiful badass. Yeah, and he came and sat in, and no one knew him at the time, and he just blew everybody's mind, and then we kind of went our separate ways and came back together to do Subtle Disguise, and we actually connected at a jazz festival where I have an album called Love Is a Pendulum, the one I did with Donny, McCaslin, Charlie Giuliani. And he came to the gig, and afterwards we had dinner, and he expressed something that's really beautiful about Raul. Is he said, man, when I hear music like that, like the music you played tonight, Joe, he said, that's all I want to do is that kind of music. But he said, but I also I love R&B and pop music, and he said there's that part of me that still wants to be a pop star, you know. So he said I'm battling those two sides of my personality, but I think that battling of the two aspects of the personality creates something really interesting and beautiful, you know. So that's Raul, man. He's a jazz musician, a really deep jazz musician, but he's also a pop star, man. He can fill like a big theater with just him and his voice and his guitar, you know, which he does on a regular basis, you know.
No, it's beautiful. It's
really fun to work with him.
Yeah, it adds such a nice color, you know, especially vibes and vocals. I don't know, it's not so much done. It should be done more, actually. It's such a nice combo, you know, of blending these two things. Yeah. It's beautiful. I like that.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you already before, like, make me feel like raining, like it's raining. How do you write that? Let's say, where do you start with I mean, it's such a beautiful, when I listen to your music, melodies are always important, even though it's complex and there's complexity, chordal or rhythmical. But like, you know, when I listen to something like that, it's such a beautiful melody. And like, how do you start with a composition like that? Where did you go? Where did you start?
That song was written upon hearing of the death of Bobby Hutcherson. And Bobby said he did an interview once, and the interviewer asked him, said, Bobby, you know, after all the music you've made and so many people have listened to you over the years, what do you, as a listener, what do you want to hear when you hear someone for the first time? And Bobby's response was so beautiful. He said, I want you to make me laugh or make me cry, make me feel like it's raining outside.
Oh, wow, man. That's so beautiful.
So, and that's what Bobby did every time. Bobby had the ability to tell a story in that deep way, and I thought that when he passed, I sat at the piano and I wrote this piece for him, and it came very quickly, because there's a lot in there. My feelings for Bobby, and when he died, had great sadness and meaning for me. But the title just seemed to be there, just waiting for the song to be written, and so I called it "Make Me Feel Like It's Raining," and dedicated it to him. And on the end of the album, actually, I'm going to forget his name, this last name. Oh my God! But she sings a vocal version of it.
Oh, Alina
Engibaryan, thank you.
Yeah.
She's an amazing singer, and she sang it, and it's the vocal version of "Make Me Feel Like It's Raining," and all the lyrics that I wrote. Every line references something about Bobby, and if you knew him, some of the references you would get, some you might not. And that's myself on piano, and David, actually Binney on saxophone, and Alina Alina on vocals.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of nice to be able to do two different manifestations of the same song on the album. Yeah. And both dedicated to Bobby.
Did you? I mean, did you already meet Bobby like in the 80s, or when did your story with Bobby begin? Like,
I became friends with him. A slow process of becoming friends with him over the course of my entire life. Appreciating Bobby from listening to him in my bedroom when I was a teenager, a young teenager, to then going and hearing him, and then feeling like I had the privilege of of him knowing my name. The next time I came, and he would say, "Hi, Joe," and then getting to know my wife, and then when I started playing in the band of Eddie Henderson, Eddie and Bobby were good friends, and Rosemary and Bobby would come to our gigs if Bobby was in town, and it was just a friendship that developed slowly over the years. And I've said about Bobby before that after all the thousands of hours of listening I did to him, going to his concerts and listening to his albums, I realized after getting to know him as a human being that I would have loved him if he never played a note of music, because it was the human being I had fallen in love with, not just the musician. And more than any musician I've ever known, Bobby's music was truly just a reflection of the beautiful human being he was. Yeah, and so that's that.
Yeah, that's that. No, I agree. I mean, I never met him, never had the privilege, but of course, the records and the music speak. It's incredible. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but otherwise, I want to go now just to some other area, and ask you about Storms and Nocturnes band. I did this talk the other day with Jeffrey Keyser, and
you spoke to Jeffrey?
Yeah, we did it like a month ago, this interview, and that was so much fun, man. I didn't know. I mean, I know his music, but
he's such a blast, man.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. He was just in Europe on tour with Dave Sanborn, and he found 2 hours or 1 hour, and we just spoke, and it was just like, man, talk about history, like what he's done. And but how did you and Jeffrey hook up? It's such a there's like a beautiful footage of you guys from Jazz Baltica on YouTube when you played. I think it was Jazz Baltica in Germany.
And that was after a lot of history before that. Man, I wanted to ask you. I'm seeing online here that we have 4 minutes left.
Like after 4 minutes, we just basically log back in, because this is like this free version, and
Oh, cool. No, but I was going to about Keezer, we first met when we both played in the Mingus Big Band, when the Mingus Big Band was first formed.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
A
Okay.
couple of gigs with the Mingus Big Band, and then we played we did a week at the Vanguard many years ago with with Marvin Smitty Smith's band.
Really? I didn't know that. Wow, man.
Yeah, we did a
Oh,
week at the
killing.
Vanguard with Kenny Davis and Steve Wilson
Oh,
and
wow.
myself, Keezer, and that was kind of the beginning of a friendship. And then wow, we like we'd occasionally cross paths, and then we did a Tim Garland album when Tim was playing saxophone in Chick's Origin band.
Yeah.
Tim did an album for Chick's label, and at the end of the album, Tim decided to do a sort of a chamber trio song. It was called Trinity, and it was at the very end. It's a beautiful album, by the way.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
It's such a, his writing is so amazing. But at the end of the album, he did this chamber trio piece, and it was just myself and Keezer and Tim, and that was the beginning of that chamber trio called Storms Nocturnes. And yeah, we had the ability to do, I think, 3 albums, all of which I'm very proud, and play a bunch of gigs and play Europe and the States, and it was always challenging for me, but really a chance to express that part of me that I didn't get a chance to express in the other things that I was doing. Just to get a chance to play Tim's music and Keezer's music, and this stuff that was very decidedly modern, and some of it had a very sort of pseudo classical bent to it. And for me, man, I just feel like Samo playing that music made me a better musician, man. It was like being in school. It was like being in school again, man. And I remember like working on Tim's music. I would always start like when I would get a Tim Garland piece. Keezer and I used to joke his songs would be 14 pages long. And I would start by cursing him out, going, "Damn, another one of these hard ass tunes I have to learn." But then I would end up thanking him because the music would be so beautiful. I would go, no. I shouldn't be angry at having to work on this. It's a privilege to be able to work on this,
Yeah.
And the hangs on the road were just a blast, man.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
So much fun, man.
Is this group still alive? I mean, they're still planning to do something with these guys?
I hope we do something again in the future. It seems like we reconvene every 10 years at this point. We call ourselves the Jet Lag Trio. It used to be Keezer would be in LA, I'd be in New York, and Tim would be in London. So someone would always be jet lagged, But I'm not sure if we'll reconvene. But even if we don't, I feel really lucky that we have. All the music documented that we do. Just a complete blast. And Keezer, man, he's just such a. I always say, any day I wake up knowing I'm going to play with Jeff Keezer, I know is a good day.
Oh wow, man, that's nice.
Yeah,
that's a cool one. Yeah, Jeffrey, and all these incredible pianists. I wanted to ask you about Frank Kimbrough and Kenny Barron, especially Frank. I mean, he's Kenny everyone knows, but like again, one of the underrated guys, Frank Kimbrough. How did I love those albums that you guys did, like Saturn's Child, I think that one with when you did the rendition of Chick's tune, man, and that's Crystal Silence. I think it's like, how did you meet with Frank actually? And
Frank used to play at a club called the Village Corner, and it was a little corner bar in Greenwich Village years and years ago. And I used to go and sit at the corner of the bar and have a beer and listen to him. And he would turn that bar into Carnegie Hall, man, when he played.
Wow, that's beautiful.
There would be a bunch of tourists in there on a Saturday afternoon, and he would quiet the place down just with the presence of his music, And he was somebody who didn't care about notoriety or fame or anything like that. Frank was a very unique guy, and it was a privilege to get the opportunity, just like with Storms Nocturnes. it was just a privilege, to be able to document those 3 albums with him. And we went our separate ways. And in the last decade or so, we weren't close, and we didn't see each other except in passing. But I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to have been able to play with him.
Yeah.
And I would like to say that we had a special chemistry, but I think Frank pulled that out of just about anyone that he played with. He was a really he had a lot of what's the word, sympathetic.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And he played well with others.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But I got that same feeling playing. I got that same feeling with Kenny Barron. I first started playing with Kenny in the band of Eddie Henderson, and had the opportunity to make a duo album with
I love it. But beautiful.
Kenny. Yeah. And we went in the studio for an afternoon, no rehearsal, just like call tunes and talk about effortless, music making, just like completely effortless, I think Samo, about, it was a privilege to play with all of those pianists, and there are some with whom I've played that there isn't documentation of. But when I think about the fact that I've had the ability, to play with Kirk Lightsey, on several occasions, and many times with George Cables, and many times with the great John Hicks, both in duo and as a duo and in band settings. These people are my heroes, man. I was able to I did a duo tour with Cecil Taylor.
No, seriously? When was that?
I played in Cecil's in a quartet. Played in a quartet setting with Cecil, and then he asked me to do a duo tour. I think we did only two or three concerts in Italy, in what must have been around the turn of the millennium. And
seriously,
and that was a singular experience. I had been friends with Cecil, for many years, and Cecil used to always say, when we bump into each other, he'd say, "Joseph, we're going to make some notes together," and I would say, "Yeah, sure, Cecil," And then I got the call, to go to Italy with him, and it was challenging, man, because all the things that I knew or that I relied on about music were not there with Cecil.
Did you improvise completely, or did you play like
completely improvised?
Wow, man!
Completely improvised, but it was just this amazing. It was just this amazing opportunity that I would have never dreamed I would ever have in a lifetime, And it wasn't just making music with Cecil; it was being in the hotel with him, or going, just talking about, you would ask him, you would say something about the train schedule, and he would talk to you for an hour about the history of train travel in Europe.
Wow, yeah.
Or you'd say something about the dinner, and he would talk about the organic farming, and he would have a whole dissertation about that. A very, very smart man,
Yeah.
I used to love to hear him expound on different subjects, So man, what a privilege to get to, hang out with these great people: Kenny Barron, Frank Kimbrough, John Hicks, Cecil Taylor. The thing about Cecil too that was amazing is Cecil really thought of himself as an extension of the tradition. He saw himself as an extension of Art Tatum, Bud Powell, Monk. He saw himself in Duke Ellington. He felt, and I think maybe I don't want to speak for him, but I think he was hurt when people who knew better were thought of him as outside of that tradition, as intrinsically, and instead of intrinsically a part of that tradition. But interesting, man.
Did you record any of these concerts, or someone did? Like
there are bootlegs, man.
Man, I have to find this, man. Like, how was it for you playing completely open? Because I have you, like most albums I have you on is like playing compositions and going from there somewhere. But like, did you play a lot of open stuff in your career? Like you said with Cecil?
The concerts, it was completely improvised. We came out, there was nothing. It was just one extended song. I remember one concert we did on was it Orvieto perhaps?
Yeah.
We started playing, and about 45 minutes in, it was a very hot theater, and I have calluses on my hands that I've developed after years of playing. You know what the calluses are like,
Yeah.
and it was so hot and humid in this theater, and we were playing so hard, my calluses opened up, and I looked
Oh
down,
shit.
and there was blood all over the vibes keyboard, and I was bleeding, and I looked at Cecil like, with eye contact, like saying, "I'm in trouble. Can we wrap this up? I'm in trouble." And he looked over, playing it, he looked over and said, "Oh yeah, I see what's going on." And then he played another 45 minutes. So I had to stay in there and play,
Oh shit.
But
That's fantastic, actually. Well, that's incredible, man. Yeah. I mean,
but it was just, yeah, I don't,
wow.
I mean, I don't pretend that there are so many people who are more versed at being able to play duo with Cecil, but he wanted to do it because he called me to do it, and I did my best to sort of just jettison all that I kind of knew, and just try to be as present and in the moment, and not play things that I relied on. And as
Sure.
a result of that, it was really sort of like pulling your pants down in public,
Oh man, sure.
on a musical level, because I couldn't rely on anything that were my isms,
Yeah. Do you
So
still feel like doing something like that? Like doing a completely free or open record? Or
no, I don't. I listen to, I listen to the people who do it well, like you and Arl and Bob, and I appreciate it in a deep way. But I have no desire to do a completely free record. No. I hope I bring a level of spontaneity to the music I do
yeah,
play,
sure.
but I'll leave the completely free playing to those who really, who really know how to do that.
Mm.
I like the what I call it the four walls of freedom. Harmony, melody, rhythm, and form.
Yeah.
How what they afford me the ability to work within a form which is more freeing to me than playing free.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you know Thomas Merton, the Catholic monk, when he said he entered the monastery as a young man, and they showed him this room he was going to live in for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
He said it felt like the four walls of my new freedom. And I thought harmony, melody, within those four walls, where I'm not inhibited, but where it's actually freeing for me,
Freedom within the form. Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
freedom
Yeah.
from form. Yeah. But man, like who are those to you who play free? Who are the best exponents of free playing? Would you say?
Yeah. Good one.
Who are the free players?
I
Or
mean,
the free players that I went through a period recently, like listening to Albert Eiler,
oh man, yeah.
and really
Yeah.
try to, appreciating his his work and stuff. And there's
Yeah.
music that's really not free, but that I think some of the aspects of your album kind of speak to. Although it's not free at all, like
Yeah.
but they're more open, like Conference of the Birds, man. With
Yeah. I love that stuff, man. Oof, one of my favorites. Yeah.
Sam and Anthony Braxton and Barry Altschul and
Also,
Dave.
yeah.
That's really they're taking a lot of chances. There are some albums that I think that I think are in between. There's a Billy Hart album called Enchants. That's
Yeah.
a beautiful
Yeah.
album. It has Hannibal Peterson and Don Pullen and Dave Holland and also Eddie Henderson, and
Yeah.
there's this beautiful balance between I don't even want to say post bop, but man, players who really understand that post bop, hard bop sensibility,
Yeah.
but they're not playing hard bop. They're playing much more open than that,
Yeah.
and that's a beautiful way to play.
Yeah.
That's why I love Don Pullen for that reason.
Oh man, yeah. One of those guys. Yeah.
His ability to to play totally inside and then really just to break the form open and play.
Yeah. Or Dave Holland, he was the same. I mean, he is the same kind of. Or
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I mean, it's. I also love. I don't like playing completely free. It gets also boring. I really like to play a composition, even when I write like even a complex head, like an odd meter or quite harmonically complex, but then go into open solo section. I really like that. I don't know why. It's
there's a lot of stuff in the Storms Nocturnes music where there's where after all the ink it just says open, like on the music paper it just says open. And Keezer and I would play, like, there are a lot of moments with myself and with myself and Jeffrey where there's no roadmap whatsoever.
That's beautiful.
And we're just playing and listening to one another. And that's, so that kind of free playing I really like.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah.
But it's like freedom within the form, you know.
Yeah. I like that too. Like, you know, that you have like a complex or not even so complex head, and then going into free section, and then again a head. That it kind of have at least some, you know, brackets. Like, okay, we go there and we go there. Then it's. I don't know. I don't think I'm good enough to play completely. I run out of ideas sometimes. I think, I don't know. I repeat myself. I don't know.
Well, man, I have to say, man, it sounds like sort of that freedom within the form is kind of what your trio, like with Arnold and Bob, is all about. And I can't wait to hear you guys after you finish this 14 city run that you're about to do, man. You guys are gonna be just tearing it up, man.
Yeah, I hope so. Let's see. Looking forward to that, man. Yeah. But we were on tour at the same time. I saw in October. You were also with Yaka on tour, and
I'm going to be with Vladimir Konstantinovich and Yaka Kopek and Amin Salim with this group called Amaranth, and I'm really looking forward to that, man. And
we're touring at the same time in Europe, so
perhaps we'll cross paths even. That would be great.
That would be so cool, man. Yeah, but Joe, I just wanted to ask you also this, like, you know, I started with this one, but which is like 28 years ago. But how do you see your development as a band leader? And when you think of yourself, you know, when you started in the 80s and now, what have you learned being a band leader, and how have you progressed? Like,
as a band leader, it's as a musician and as a human being, you know, what have I learned?
And if it's easier for you now, I mean,
like I got to. Life is never easy for me. You know, life is always challenging. I experience a lot of joys, and I get in my own way a lot, and I struggle with my own, you know, with my own anxieties and frustrations and insecurities, you know, like we all have. But for me, Samo, a big part of my story, and if you were to listen to my music, I feel like I really started to grow artistically a lot in the late '90s, and then into the new millennium. And that's to a large degree because in 1993 I got sober. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and after a lot of abusing myself with alcohol, I got sober in 1993 and felt a real blossoming, not only of my potential, but also of my creativity. And I felt like a lot of that energy that I was putting into feeding negative aspects of my life, and or just recovering from abusing myself. Now I could move forward in a straight line and just wake up every day feeling good and feeling creative, and it was a big and important thing in my life. And I think if I go back and I listen, I can really hear where I'm clear, you know, and all these years later, I mean, next year I'll be sober for 30 years.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
Yeah. And I still feel today, man, like I still feel very much like a student there are things that I'm working on today that I just I always have more to work on. You know what it's like. It's like Dizzy Gillespie. I was sitting at the piano with Dizzy Gillespie when I was 17, and Dizzy was showing me some chords, and he said, Joe, he said your instrument is always going to have more, to give you, to kick your ass, and for me, it makes me really happy just to know that I'm still developing. I'm 63 and I'm still very much in a process of learning. And so sometimes I get angry at myself because I go, oh, you should have known this 30 years ago. But then the other part of me, like the more nurturing parent inside of me, says, well, but if you already knew it 30 years ago, you wouldn't be having this fun adventure now. So no, it's really a gift, man. It's a gift to be able to feel like at my age now that I'm still developing, that I'm still a work in progress.
What are you working on now, let's say, or these days, or these months? What are you practicing? What are your main, let's say, areas you want to investigate? Or
oh man, just there's a lot of very nerdish minutia.
Okay.
Man, I've been really having fun with what's hidden inside the major, with a tonic consonant major chord, a C major chord. Yeah. What's hidden inside there? I was listening to an interview with somebody once, and I forget who the interview was, but they said something like, a musician's worst enemy is a static major chord, because it's not going anywhere, it's just sitting. But as I've gotten older, I've realized, there's so much movement and harmonic movement hidden within a simple C major 6 chord, so I've enjoyed exploring. I'm really into pathways, harmonic pathways,
yeah.
And it's very easy to play a lot of stuff on an alter dominant chord, because it's a chord, yeah, that's on its way somewhere else, and there's a lot of stuff to play on a minor chord, and there's a lot of stuff to play on a half diminished chord, but a tonic major 7 chord is sort of, I always felt like, what do I do on this, So I've really been exploring, all the and just having fun, going, oh my goodness, if I look at it that way, this C major 7 chord is actually a B7 sharp 9, and it's also an A flat 7 sharp 9. And it's also it's also an E alter dominant, and it's also A minor major 7, and it's also this, and it's also that, and it's also diminished, and it's but finding my own, not learning that stuff from a book. I feel like if you learn those kind of things, if someone gives it to you, hands it to you and says, this is on page 57 of this book, it's got to be a journey of self-discovery, that you have to arrive at it in your own way,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
A friend of mine, Jim Hart, great vibes player, who's from England.
Sure, know him. Yeah.
Yeah, who lives in France. Jim. He sent me. I had done some work years and years and years ago on train solo from Crescent, this Crescent, and I had taken some phrases from Crescent, and Jim and I had a conversation about it, and he sent me the entire transcription of Train Solo, which he did, and I made a study of finding some of Train's phrases and how to repurpose them to work over
harmony,
certain Great American Songbook harmony or different things, and realizing just taking a shape that was attractive to me of Trains and finding ways to use that or alter it or morph it or make it my own in some way. Yeah. Something about Train's shapes that he would play is really amazing to me, that I felt like in some of my work with Crescent, this is really going down the rabbit hole now, Samo, but I feel like sometimes the shape of a phrase will make it possible for you to move it around and play it. Let's say if you're in the key of B flat, you can take a shape and move it around in several different places, and it will still resolve to the same place. Because the shape is how can I put it? The architecture of the shape lends itself to landing in different ways, and I just think those are things that just make me open me up and make me think differently. And then you realize, I can take this shape. I can take the shape of trains that he played over a sort of over a minor pedal point, and if I play it this way, then I can play it on a major seven on a static major seven chord, as we were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
So just this, just like nerding out on harmony, but realizing that, and I think when I do that kind of stuff, then when I play in concert, when I play live, it puts me all of that work, like nerding out on harmony. It puts me in a state of when I'm actually playing with the band, of some of those things that I'd worked on kind of come up from my subconscious, and then you start to play them, or to be able to pick them up in a spontaneous way.
Yeah.
But it's from sitting at the piano and figuring things out, or so that's that's just one example of things that I work on.
That's beautiful. I have to practice now. Just listening to this, it's so inspiring. I mean, I'm like, man, I should practice. But yeah,
there's a funny thing. Alan Watts. There was a writer, Alan Watts, who was a philosopher. He was like a psychedelic philosopher, and he had a book called Nature, Man, and Women. Nature, Man, and Woman, and he talked about that spontaneous creativity, and he equated it with being like a frog sitting on a lily pad in a pond, and the frog is waiting for the fly to go by because he wants to catch the fly, and the fly goes by, and boom, his tongue goes out and he grabs the fly, and the fly is in his mouth before you can even see what's happening. And I think that's kind of the metaphor, the beautiful metaphor for like improvising, is to be in a state of readiness, not to determine, I'm going to do this in my solo. No, but it's to be in a state of readiness. So if you want to access something, you can grab it, just like the fly, the frog grabbing the fly, and that's the ultimate kind of state to be in. Not that it's I can always be there, but that's what I try to shoot for, and that's kind of what practicing helps for me.
Oh yeah, I think for everyone. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, beautiful, man. Yeah, well, see, that's why I love doing these talks, because then I get inspired to practice. It's like, fuck, man, I need to do some shit.
Right? I hear you, man. I hear you.
No, but beautiful. But Joe, not to take more of your time. I mean, I have so many other questions, but like, I don't want to go deeper. But like, what are you working now? You said you have a new album out coming next year, but are you writing now also some new music? And what are you writing or working on?
Well, no, I finished all the writing, and I'm really excited about this new album, Samo. And as I said, it's called Makram, and it's dedicated. The title is dedicated to Makram Hosne, who's a bass player in Beirut, Lebanon, who I just when I met him 5 years ago or so in Europe, and he's just one of these human beings that sort of renewed my faith in people. Just a beautiful, beautiful person. And so the album is called Makram. And Makram, the song is basically it's like a Middle Eastern minor blues in 5.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
And I was really happy that after we did the album, the musicians went into the studio and recorded. And after conversations with Makram himself, I asked him. I had heard his album, and he had these beautiful musicians. He had a gentleman playing the oud, and a gentleman playing the rik, which is like the tambura. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if I could get them on the track Makram? So we sent the tracks to Beirut, and the melody to Makram is the oud and vibes playing the melody to this.
Oh wow, beautiful, man.
So it's that little sort of referencing the culture from which from comes. And there's a piece on your album actually that reminded me of the oud. You're playing guitar. I think you're playing guitar on it, but it's one of the later tracks on the album, and it sounds like you're playing a Middle Eastern guitar or a Middle Eastern instrument, but I think you're playing it on guitar.
I think it's a 12 string, maybe. Maybe it's a 12 string, but otherwise I just played electric and 12 string on that one. Yeah.
It has a very Middle Eastern flavor to it, though. Yeah. And and we do some music. There's a piece called Shifting Moon that's actually Coltrane's Satellite that's done
beautiful.
in 4 and 7, altering between 4 and 7.
Oh man, okay.
And there's a piece that actually Jim Ridl composed as a dedication to the memory of the great guitarist Vic Juris.
Yes, man. Yeah.
Beautiful piece of music for Vic. And there's a piece on the album called Raise, R-A-I-S-E, Raise Heaven, that I composed for Roy Hargrove when he died. And that's featuring a brass septet that was arranged by the trombonist Doug Beavers. There are 2 songs on the album which feature not only the quartet but a brass septet, sort of creating like an undercurrent to the track. And I'm very excited. I'm very excited about the album. And actually, Tim Garland is a guest on the album, playing.
Oh wow, fantastic!
Playing all kinds of woodwinds on a track, but it's the core quartet. It's the core quartet with some special guests. And I'm just really happy, to get the opportunity to keep playing with that band.
You want to bring these guys to Europe? I mean, do you have a plan to make a European tour? Or
it's funny. This fall, the album isn't coming out until February of 23. And this fall, I'm going to be doing Amaranth with Vlad and the Cats. And hopefully come to Europe with the band. We'll see what happens. But onward it goes, man. Right?
Definitely. Yeah, I hope to catch you in Europe here. I mean, it would be nice to hear this band. I mean, live.
Thanks. I'll send you the music when it's ready, man.
Oh, please! I have a radio show also on Slovenian National Radio, so I can play it. I mean, would love to present it also. So when it's on.
Man, I had a great time in Slovenia, man, and I'm looking forward. I think some of the dates that we're doing in October are in Slovenia, I think, and I had a really good experience there, man, and I look forward.
We should hook up. Would be nice to share, a dinner or something together.
And where are you located, man?
I'm in Maribor. You know Maribor?
Of course, man, in Maribor. I played a great gig in Maribor with Clemens Marktel.
Oh yeah, when was that?
And Milan, Milan, the bass player.
We played together a couple of times. Yeah, sure.
Oh, Milan, but I just feel like, man, sometimes Americans are so deep because we have this arrogance, like Americans have this arrogance, like no place is as good as America. And yet I have to say, man, I go to Slovenia and I feel it's so much more civilized than America, man. I feel like that's just my take on it though, man. I come back home and I go, I don't know, man. We're very arrogant, and I don't think we have the best thing going here.
Nah, the quality of living here, I have to admit, it's quite good. Like food and everything. It's still okay. We're going towards you, kind of ish, slowly, but it's still really nice here.
I hope you're not going toward us in the negative ways that we're going.
Yeah, I mean. But yeah, if you're around, please let me know. Let's get together, and would be nice to talk and hang and maybe play one day. Who knows? So
absolutely,
it'd be beautiful.
It was a pleasure to connect with you, man.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much, Joe, for taking the time. I really appreciate it. So.
And keep in touch, man. And I'm gonna find out like what your dates are, and maybe we can connect in Europe.
Yeah.